Hi, this is David Rippy coming at you with more of the Powering Through Paralysis series. This is a reading from my book. The narrator is Alexandria Dupre.
Keeping a positive versus a negative attitude. How do you nurture a positive attitude when all the statistics say you're a dead man? You go to work. Patrick Swayze. Someone once said, life is 10% of what happens to you, and 90% of how you respond to it. It's amazing how many people underestimate the power of positive thinking. A person's success can be directly attributed to how positive an attitude they try to maintain when they are faced with challenging situations. There is another saying that goes, as a man thinketh, so he is. I decided to try and remain positive when I was faced with adversity, though it was not always easy. There were plenty of occasions where something would break unexpectedly on my wheelchair, or an assistant couldn't make it to work for one reason or another. These unforeseen events would sometimes lead to a cancellation of that day's plans or activities. It is very easy to slip into a negative mindset unless you find something positive to replace the unexpected disappointment. I tried to approach the unexpected as an opportunity to have time to get to other things that I had been neglecting. Success starts with your state of mind. Every one of us has the innate ability to conquer the majority of obstacles we encounter if we learn to minimize our negative thoughts. As mentioned throughout other sections in this book, I try to approach setbacks as a test or challenge to conquer and move beyond, not as something to firmly root in my psyche, as just another traumatic or sad event that befell me. Try to detach yourself from the issue at hand, and from a distance, observe how best to approach and solve. If you don't fully embrace your problem, refuse to absorb it, or let in your space, it's not as much a part of your world, making it that much easier to move beyond. There's no limit to what you can accomplish once you completely understand the power of being positive. Though staying positive is never easy, how much harder did you find it was getting over something if you approached the situation darkly, or with pure dread or misery in your mind? You are the one who dictates what swirls in your mind and thoughts. How you approach your fears, trials, and tribulations is up to you. Your thoughts are powerful. How you process things in your mind will often determine how well you get along with others. Your thoughts will affect the people you encounter through your walk of life, and the type of attitude you project will either repel them, or they will be attracted by your positive and uplifting nature. The choice is yours to be either negative or positive. Positive thoughts are greeted by most as welcome, whether consciously aware or not. Also, people who carry positive thoughts are usually the happiest and, in most cases, more successful. Those lucky individuals that are fortunate enough to be around happy people often will find themselves energized by them. In my case, unfortunately, a magic formula didn't exist to instantly cure my paralysis, although a good hospital and rehabilitation afterward made it possible for me to go home after 6 months. I was now faced with big questions, which I didn't yet have the time to find answers to, but I realized early on that my attitude would determine where and how far I could eventually go. My body no longer sported a well-built frame. That alone would put an athlete into a negative frame of mind for some time, and I was no exception. I missed playing championship-level racquetball in college and ripping a slalom ski at 35 miles an hour on the water. No more pumping iron, running with the wind in my face on the beach, no more taekwondo, and the hundreds of other things I enjoyed. The world that I found happiness in before was changed forever. It was not possible to return to my past and start over. The only way was forward. I decided not to focus on the things I couldn't do anymore, at least not in a sad way. I reflected on those times more like fond memories one may look back upon. I thought again of things that I did enjoy and could still do that didn't require being able-bodied, but I had never taken the time before my accident. I was always too caught up in my life and the physical things that I did before my paralysis. Things such as music, reading, and writing took a backseat before my accident. Now I found myself with more time to enjoy these pursuits. I also had more time to learn about the challenges I faced with living with paralysis, and more time to work on a wide variety of goals from my health to my career. Concerning my career, I established 4 smaller goals at first, that all had to come together to get to my loftier goal of being a money manager. This kept my mind moving forward in a positive direction, leaving little time to dwell on what I could no longer do physically. I thought I would make a list of the positive and negative things in my life, and separate them into columns. In the first column, I listed what I thought were negatives, and in the second column what I perceived as positive. I tried to be objective and neutral when making this list. In other words, if I were in a bad frame of mind when contemplating my positives and negatives, it would have been easier to come up with additional things in my life as more negative than they were. I had many entries to add to the positive column, such as my supportive family, good friends, my mental faculties were intact, and I had recently completed my undergraduate degree, so educational requirements were out of the way. The negatives were many in number, though at the core they all had one thing in common: paralysis. Something that I couldn't change and adversely impacted the many things I enjoyed doing before my accident that I could no longer do. Other negatives were things that I couldn't do independent of others now, like dressing myself, bathing and eating. Beyond the activities I enjoyed before my accident, there were hundreds of others I never had the chance to try, like jet skiing, flying a small plane, driving a Porsche in the desert, island hopping in a boat, among others. Those were negatives. It would be hard for anyone faced with quadriplegia/paralysis to find anything positive. How could there possibly be anything positive? For just a moment, try to think creatively outside of the box. Be the one thinking outside the box. With paralysis, no longer would I be expected to do a slew of activities that required being able-bodied. No longer would I have to mow the lawn, rake leaves, wash dishes, or clean my house. Work that I wasn't keen on before my accident had now vanished, fading into my past. No more washing clothes, cooking, ironing, sweeping, and the hundreds of other things I never really enjoyed doing, now all gone. For everything I couldn't do that I enjoyed, there were so many other things that I found tedious and boring, no longer on my plate, making them positive things. What you perceive as negative will often be much more positive than you realize. With a little mental effort and broadening your perspectives, no matter your situation, afterward there will be additional positives as well. Thinking outside the box makes that more realistic and possible. Work on what's negative, and if possible, try to change for the better. Negative thoughts have been known to make others around you feel drained if you are the one projecting negative vibes in your immediate area. If someone else around you is acting pretty darkly, and you had found yourself in a pretty happy mood at the time, you may notice your energy level or happiness dropping. You might have heard the expression, energy vampire. Instead of blood, the negativity of this person sucks the energy out of you. Try to keep your negative thoughts to a minimum, and get yourself back focusing on the good things in your life, and what you're thankful for. Ask yourself this. 1. How many times have you been excited to hang out with a negative person? 2. How often do you try to avoid their text messages, emails, and phone calls? 3. If at work or just out in public, do you try to avoid them or go in the opposite direction when you know they're headed your way? 4. How many of you breathe a deep sigh of relief when a negative person leaves your personal space? There is power in a positive attitude, and a positive attitude will attract like-minded people. That's the universal law of attraction. A negative attitude will repel people. There have been hundreds of studies that suggest on average an optimistic person will live a healthier and longer life than a cynical person. After all, it doesn't hurt to try and smile more often. Your smile can take you long ways. It can display your confidence and say a lot about your attitude. Staying positive can prove to be an ongoing challenge, but it can be done. When feeling down or negative about something, challenge yourself to find that silver lining around the event. If you make an effort to always look for the positives in life, it will contribute to making you a happier person. It might even change your attitude in the process. With over 7.5 billion people on this planet, chances are you will not agree with the opinions and views of everyone you meet. It doesn't mean you have to accept or follow any, but adopting a fearful, negative outlook or response to viewpoints that are different than yours limits your mind's ability to grow and evolve. Whether you are at work, on the net, around the neighborhood, or any direction you head out your front door, you will encounter viewpoints, and many of them will run counter to yours. Whether discussing politics, religion, let alone the merits of a particular sports team, all humans will have unique opinions that will differ from yours in varying degrees. No one has similar perceptions, beliefs, or viewpoints that are identical in every way. We are all unique and different. Often due to similarities or differences, we can be swept up in either positive or negative emotions, tipping toward one extreme or the other, finding ourselves caught up in the opinions of others, letting them affect us far more than they should. As a result, to avoid appearing different, many will be content to tread the status quo, not wanting to stand out. A few will be more open-minded toward others' views, and the rare few will find they can accept all. Those that can tolerate, understand, and accept differing viewpoints from theirs will find them living a more balanced and centered life. Staying centered leads to more focus and presents the traveler a clearer view on their road of life. Those select few who consistently stay balanced will often walk alone or in small groups of like-minded people, all living and experiencing with broader perspectives, acceptance, and vision. Finding that they do not allow their mind to be cluttered and embroiled in no-win silly arguments, working hard to avoid being drawn into non-fruitful discussions that often end without any resolution. Rarely will they spend precious moments being swayed from one end of their different spectrum to the other, going from a positive outlook to a negative, then back again. Try to journey down the road of your life in the middle lane, always maintaining an ability to look to your left or your right objectively, remembering the shortest distance to success, happiness, and fulfillment is the straight or balanced path. Staying balanced and centered is hard at times, especially if certain paradigms you've always held sacred, perhaps immutable, eventually change with time, or someone you encounter holds views at the polar opposite of yours. Step back, listen, and if you feel inclined, share your differing points in calm, measured tones. You may find others swayed by your arguments, and more receptive than if you approach them with loud and aggressive proclamations. In addition, you may learn something, either a new perspective or new material to bolster your viewpoints. A huge positive in my life was that I had a broad network of support. Many wonderful assistants I hired through the years were critical in helping me to achieve my goals and dreams. Fortunately, I didn't have many naysayers to discourage me from my aspirations. Naysayers by definition have nothing objective or concrete to help you move forward, and more often than not, just provide you with self-defeating thoughts on why you shouldn't pursue your dreams and ambitions. Rarely do naysayers provide any positive insights to help you accomplish your goals. So just ignore them. Keep in mind what the Dalai Lama said: in the practice of tolerance, one's enemy is the best teacher. Not suggesting we should seek out what we may consider an enemy to learn tolerance from, or that all intolerant people should be viewed as enemies. The truth is, every one of us have known intolerant people at one time or another in our life, and will likely encounter many more on our journey. We do not have to embrace their negativity, just listening to their discouragement may be enough to help propel us forward. Use their mentality as an example of how not to think or react. Remember, birds of a feather flock together. Do your best too. Ignore any negative comments or actions which are meant to tear you down. Try not to entertain negative thoughts, which will only keep you from achieving your dreams. Invest your time and energy into becoming an actual example of what happens if you never give up hope and continue to believe. Laugh in spite of any negative situation placed before you. A healthy body starts with a healthy mind. Many are familiar with the belief that humor and laughter can strengthen our immune system and help us to recover from sickness. Laughter also confuses others who wish to see you fail. It could weaken their desire to discourage you and prevent them from penetrating your inner self. You never know, it might eventually even inspire them to adapt your way of thinking. Not that anyone wants to be poor or suffer debilitating setbacks, but trying to approach in a less negative light helps greatly. If problems are overwhelming you, try to shift your focus to the good things going on in your life. The choice is yours.